Hello, everybody, and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd. I'll be your host tonight for another hour of good gardening. If you haven't seen Backyard Farmer before, we answer gardening questions. So if you have problems in your lawn garden or with your trees, just give us a call, 402-472-1212 if you live in Lincoln. Our toll-free number is 800-676-5446. You can also send us an email of your question. JPEG pictures go to byf@unl.edu. We answer those on future shows, and sometimes we get back to you without being on a future show. So please do give us as much information about your issue as you can, including where you live. We've got to have that piece. Remember, you can also follow Backyard Farmer during the week on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, all that good stuff. So we have samples, and this is so timely because we had a picture of this, Jonathan.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I brought with me tonight some velvet ants, maybe more commonly known by their colorful sobriquet of the cow killer. And these insects are pretty famous for the color that they have and the sting that they can produce. So we have 3 females here, and they are all this sort of bright red color with black mixed in, kind of hairy. And you can see on the one down here that we have the stinger poking out. It is a very potent sting. It's called the cow killer for a reason. It doesn't actually kill cows, but it does hurt quite badly. The Schmidt pain index is what we use to measure insect sting pain, and this is a 3 out of 4, so no good. So definitely tell your kids if they see something that looks kind of like Elmo crawling around in the turf outside, that it is not cute and cuddly. It is something that they shouldn't handle and that they should leave it alone. It's beautiful, but painful, so respect it and don't bother it.
I feel really bad for Schmidt.
Yeah, he's gotten stung by a lot of stuff, that's for sure. These are also kind of interesting because they attack cicada killers. They lay their eggs on cicada killer larval nests. So some people don't like cicada killers. They might like the velvet ant.
I think that. All right, Cole, you've brought yet another something that will get soil all over our table.
I make a mess. I get in trouble for small samples, then I get in trouble for big samples.
What do we have?
I'm putting turf back in the turf chair. I was upstairs hanging out with Lauren today. When I feel smarter than I am, I go up to the plant pathology department. Not very smart. It's
set that bar really low.
I didn't say hang out with you. I said people in the plant pathology department. So what I have here, this was actually a sample that was submitted to the pathology department as a suspect for disease infection. And so it's a Kentucky bluegrass lawn, and that's this broader textured turf, right? And then they had all this finer textured area that was a little off blue color, and the homeowner suspected that this was some type of disease. And so we took a closer look, and Lauren and I both put our heads together. And we determined that this is actually fine leaf fescue. So it's just a different species of grass growing amongst the tall fescue. It's often intentionally mixed in sunshade mixtures. And so the fine fescue seed hung around and took off. And so different species.
All right, excellent. So not to be killed as a rot.
It won't sting you. It won't sting the Schmidt out of you.
Lauren, you keep doing grass things. That's pretty interesting for you.
We're just doing grass again. We're keeping it on turf tonight. So one of the things over the last couple of weeks, some of our viewers may have seen, are some patches in full sun areas that are not looking too good. And this is from an area like that. And you can see on these just how poor these root systems are. And you can see how brown and dark and just very small roots that we're dealing with. And the reason I wanted to show this is summer patch. And if you have this in full sun areas where you have pockets, but think about trying to water this turf when you've got that little bitty root system. So one thing you can do right now is if you have these patches like this, you can't really do much on the fungicide part, but right now just trying to syringe them and keep them alive. So you can't really use deep watering if you've got that type of root system. So again, this would be patches in full sun. It would be an area that maybe every year looked like this. And the key would be to try to get it identified correctly. And then if it is summer patch, you want to come in with some a fungicide that you water in much earlier in the year, in that mid-April to early May window, and make a couple applications, get that root system protected, and then you won't have these small reduced roots at this time of year. So summer patch and what to do.
Perfect, and it sounds like turf and path really are getting
kind of working together, yeah.
Okay, Jeff. Yeah, fun sample.
Different shade.
Or samples.
Well, I brought a couple things in tonight. So today, walking around campus, it's a beautiful day in Lincoln, and the first thing I'm thinking about is, we should be thinking about planting trees, right? I mean, in a couple of weeks, it's going to be tree planting season. And so a couple of things I saw today that I think do pretty well for us and maybe are a little unusual, you may not normally see. The first one I'm showing here is the Turkish filbert. And you can see it has these nice dark green serrated leaves. It's kind of unusual nut here. You can kind of see how that looks. And so it puts on a fruit, which is great for wildlife. If you like squirrels, squirrels love them. And it's a tree that will get probably in our area, maybe about 40 feet tall if we're lucky. It's relatively slow growing, but it has really lovely kind of flaky, corky bark, which is fun. But it does very well here. It's a great plant, something a little different than what we would normally see here in Lincoln. So, and it's fairly well adapted, I think, really for a good part of the state. The other one I brought in as I was walking by it by the Union, and this is a maple. It's black maple, so it's a close relative to the sugar maple. And it's something that I think really in many ways performs just as well or better than sugar maple in our area. Has nice fall color, and again, these nice leaves, and you can see they're not tattered, they're not torn up. So it does very well for us, and it's another kind of choice, other than maybe perhaps a red maple or even some of the sugar maples, is the black maple is a good choice for our area.
With a fabulous gold fall color.
Yeah, right.
Instead of the red that all of us think we need.
Does that one have any of the surface rooting like the silver maple?
You know, I suppose ultimately they would, but the ones I see really haven't had that kind of problem, so.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, guys. All right. You had, 3, 4 of these. And,
Okay.
and this is lightning round insect. It's like Wiggle World. But 3 people sent us, okay, what is this beastie eating everything from cucumbers to potatoes to crawling all over?
Yeah.
2 or 3 of these. What is this? And how do they do about it?
We've got some blister beetles in these pictures. And so blister beetles there's several different kinds that we can find here in Nebraska. There are the gray ones that we see here. There's a black variety and then a yellow one with black stripes. And as larvae, they live in the soil. They eat grasshopper eggs, so they're beneficial as a larva. The females right now are looking for places to lay their eggs. They're eating and getting ready to do that when the grasshoppers lay their eggs. But while they're doing that, they're also going around and eating potatoes and all kinds of different other crops. So if you don't want to deal with them, there are a few things you can do. Organically, you can put on a neoprene glove like I've got on right here. I'm not just a mad scientist, it's for protection. You don't want a cloth glove or a glove that's made out of leather, anything like that. It might absorb the chemical that they can exude, which creates blisters on mammalian skin. So don't use any of those other gloves or you'll end up absorbing it and getting it on you, getting a really nasty blister on you. So wear this, pick them off, throw them in a bucket of soapy water. That'll kill them. You can also put floating row covers down to try and protect your plants when you start to see damage appear. Or you can spray neem, which is also an organic product. If you're into traditional insecticides, bifenthrin and carbaryl will also work against this pest.
I'm particularly fond of the glove approach.
I love the glove approach, as you can see. Makes me feel like a superhero, sort of.
I don't know how you top this, Cole.
Do you want the glove?
No, swear the glove.
So this is only one of 2 or 3 viewers that sent pictures of this one for your first picture, and it's kind of an interesting season to see as much of this everywhere.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing it just kind of more every year, and I think that's just because we're becoming more aware of it. But this is yellow nut sedge. Perennial plant produces tubers, so right there we see an individual plant, and then at the base of the plant they're going to make roots and rhizomes, and then the tubers are made on the rhizomes underground, and so hand pulling them alone won't be very effective because it's hard to remove the tubers as well. So this is a situation where to really control this weed, you've got to use some type of herbicide. And there are several that are effective. Herbicides like Sedgehammer or Dismiss or Solero or any of the ones like Q4 that have sulfentrazone in them, which is an active ingredient in Dismiss. They can be used to suppress nut sedge, but there's usually not enough of the active ingredient in those pre-mixed products to completely control it. So we want to pay attention to how much sulfentrazone is in the pre-mixed products. Use something like Sedgehammer or a standalone product, and then it's going to take a couple applications each year. So we want to start, usually we say around June 20th, and then make another one later in the summer. But we saw nut sedge middle April this year. So I would say start treating it as soon as you see it, right? Hand pull it. People say sometimes don't do it. It releases the dormancy of daughter tubers. The same thing can happen with herbicide application. So I say whenever you see it, pull it, treat it, do whatever you can. You just have to be persistent.
All right, thank you, Cole. So this is turf, Lauren, And this is a viewer,
Turf night.
Omaha area. Saw these, he calls them either webbing or fungus. which
Beautiful
is why-
picture.
Yeah, so this one came to you.
So as these are being shown, compare this to what we see when we see the cotton from cottonwood trees, and sometimes that's confused for this type of a sign of a pathogen being present. You can also see in this image, you can see how some of those leaf blades are really bleached, and that's a good indication that you're dealing with dollar spot, which will produce a lot of this real cottony mycelia, and then the lesions on the leaf will be very white or almost bleached. So in this case, I'm going to say it's dollar spot. If it gets really hot again, this will stop. If it stays cool, it's going to keep going. So you're going to want to, possibly, if you want to keep your yard, perfect, you're going to have to use a fungicide. If not, it's not going to typically kill the yard. It'll stay in little small spots. So you can get by without a fungicide. If you need it to use one, a lot of the lawn garden fungicides that you can find with myclobutanil, even for example, would do a good job.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Black walnut
Okay.
is your first picture. This is a Lincoln viewer, 75 years old. I mean, beautiful old tree.
Right.
But we have this going on at the base, and our viewer has stuck a measuring tape in there. Can get it in about 7 inches. The tree is only about 12 feet from the house. Great shade in the summer. They want to stop this from happening, and they wonder when they should worry about the stability of the tree.
Well, there's no stopping it from happening, right, Lauren? I would say that and I would say if it's that close to the house and it's that large, the tree is compromised enough that they should have the tree removed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it'd be nice to come up with some sort of thing, how we could fix it, how we could, control it. But the reality is, when it's that close to your home, it's important that you just get the tree away from the house. So,
Yeah, unfortunately.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, All-American selections make up a big part of the backyard farmer garden. How does a plant become an All-American? Somebody has to grow it and see if it can stand up to the crazy weather conditions here in Nebraska and pretty much every place else. It turns out we have our own tester growing some trial gardens in Omaha. Here's Douglas Sarpy County Extension Educator John Porter to tell us more.
Today I'm at Cooper Memorial Farm, which is owned and operated by the Omaha Home for Boys. The home operates it as a way to provide agricultural education opportunities to their student residents. Most people don't realize that it's a 100-acre farm that's located within the city limits of Omaha in the North Omaha area. The home has partnered with Nebraska Extension and the Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture to form what's called the Urban Agriculture Education Center. And that's the program that I'm responsible for as the Urban Agriculture Program Coordinator, where we'll offer education, outreach, and research in the areas of urban agriculture. Here at the farm, there are livestock such as cattle, sheep, and chickens that the students use to raise for their 4-H projects. Most people don't realize that this site is home of one of the oldest, if not the oldest, 4-H club in Nebraska. But my program here is doing research, and we're in our trial field for the All-America Selections, which is a trial for vegetables that we're doing to see if they grow better than what's already on the market. So we got these different samples of vegetables from the All-America Selection Organization, ones that aren't on the market yet, and 2 to compare them to that are already on the market. And we say if they're good or better than the ones that are already on the market. And if so, then they will end up next year in the demonstration garden at the Backyard Farmer Garden and in your seed catalog with the AAS seal of approval, which says that they grow well for home gardeners. This year, we are trying out several different things in the garden, mostly hot peppers. There are lots of those, 4 different varieties, 3 different varieties of tomatoes, some tomatillos, cantaloupes, eggplant, and bok choy, and even radishes that are used for sprouting to make microgreens. So we're trying all of those out. At the end of the year, I'll send data to the All-America Selections Organization. They'll compile that from around the country, and then they will make their selections and say these are new and improved varieties that are available for home gardeners. So next year when you look in your seed catalog and see AAS, be sure to look for that. It says that it grows very well. And be sure to look in the Backyard Farmer Garden to see exactly how they grow.
You know, John's doing a really great job up there at Cooper Memorial Farm. We, of course, look forward to getting some of that good stuff out in our garden next year, and I think people really appreciate knowing that, okay, yeah, it did work, or, you know, some of those All-America selections go, it
Got to
just
be able to
depends.
handle Nebraska.
You bet. And us. All right, next picture is yours, and this is 1, 2, 3 kind of, the same thing. 2 people sent us this, holy buckets, what is that thing?
This is a female Dobson fly, and we got a close-up here of the Dobson fly. So I know it's a female because if we look at those pincers on top of her head, those are her mandibles that she uses to defend herself with, and hers are kind of short. In the next picture, I think we'll see that this is a male, and you can see his mandibles are much more elongated, and they look fiercer, but they're really not that dangerous. The males are much less dangerous than the females. They're really long and they're kind of gangly, and they can't do a whole lot. They just sumo wrestle each other with these big jaws that they have. They can't bite people with them, essentially. They don't even eat because their mouth is so large. The female, on the other hand, can deliver a really painful bite that can draw blood, according to a lot of other entomologists that I've read about. And they aren't pests. They're just part of the wondrous pageantry of nature, as we talk about on the show. As a larva, they're aquatic. They live in streams and creeks and rivers, and they're called a Hellgrammite. And they live down in there for about 1 to 3 years, and they are the top predator, invertebrate predator in an aquatic ecosystem before they pupate and emerge as an adult, which is the Dobson fly that we saw in those pictures.
How big are they?
The Hellgrammites, they're pretty long, 2, 3, 4 inches
I
long.
wonder they're kind of scary looking.
People use them for fishing bait a lot. They're supposed to be really attractive to smallmouth bass, if you're interested.
All righty then, a use.
Yes.
Okay, so, all right, spots in yards. So now we're still, and this is, we have a couple of pictures, and they they're probably not the same thing. So this is the first one. This is Lincoln. The neighbor has had these, and now they are moving into her yard. This is a Lincoln viewer,
Okay.
and that's what that one looks like. And I think that, and there's kind of the close-up on that one, Cole. So
Okay.
what do you think on that one?
Yeah, so as you look at the first one, you know, you think that it's maybe dollar spot because of the size of the patches, like Lauren was talking about. But as we get closer, in that close-up, I see that this lawn is mostly tall fescue, and I saw a little different lesion than we expect from dollar spot, and so that irregular-shaped, still bleachy lesion looks more like brown patch to me. And so it didn't, even though you saw it in your neighbor's lawn first, it didn't come from there. It's a really ubiquitous pathogen. It was already hanging out. It just needed the right environment to infect. So that's brown patch. I wouldn't recommend really doing anything to control it other than irrigating in the morning, not at night, and don't go crazy with nitrogen fertilization right now.
Perfect. And then the second one, which is that.
Yeah, and so this is kind of difficult to tell right now, right? But I don't actually think this is a disease. I see some kind of dislodged and moved turf, and I suspect those are critters maybe testing the soil and digging for white grubs. I don't know that to be true. I guess we can see if Jonathan agrees with me or disagrees with me, but if you peel back that turf and see some white C-shaped larvae, right, white grubs, then you can be pretty sure that was a problem, and the critters, the raccoons and things, are trying to just get them for a nice little snack. But if you don't see that, I would say grab a sample and send it to the diagnostic lab, and we can take a closer look and see what it is.
All right,
Any
perfect.
delicious land shrimp under there, those raccoons and possums will find for sure.
And shrimp.
I like my shrimp from the ocean. Thank you very much. All right, Lauren, fungus. But it's a fungus among us that really looks like a shroom. And he says this has been 3 years worth in the backyard. They range from about 1/2 inch to 12 inches in diameter. They can number in the hundreds. They kill the turf beneath the cap, and then it turns to this gel, which is this picture, and then seems to melt the grass around it, full sun to full shade.
So unfortunately, in this situation, there is something under that turf and that soil area that is growing on, and then it's fruiting, and that will continue until, and I can't tell you exactly which species this is. It's some sort of a polyp or a polypus species of some sort, but it's going to just keep going until that source is broken down. So what I would recommend, there's not really anything that you can do to treat or anything to get rid of nuisance fungi like this. So doing some things to, well, first of all, if it doesn't look like there's any thatch, people that have a lot of thatch, sometimes they grow on thatch. In this case, I think this is a wood to care though. So I would just remove them so it's not killing the turf. If you're just kind of, pretty rigorous about, always going out and pulling those, you won't at least have the dead spots. But unfortunately, really not much you can do.
All right,
Unless
thank
you
you,
can
Lauren.
remove their food source, which is going to be pretty hard.
Yeah, no kidding, dig up the whole yard, right?
That's not going to work.
Okay. All right, Jeff, excuse me, you have a couple that are kind of related because they're
Okay.
probably environmental. This is a Lincoln viewer wondering what this white stuff is on her tomatoes.
Okay, that looks like sun scald. So not unusual with our tomatoes this time of year, especially the heat that we just came out of. And what happens is those vines kind of get exposed. There's not leaves to protect those particular tomatoes, and some varieties do it more than others. So, I wouldn't worry about it. I guess I'd pick those tomatoes, let them finish ripening, and
Go from there.
Yeah.
And the second one is actually the tips of the tomato plants, and this is in Blair.
that's in Blair. So we had a discussion here on the panel about this a little bit. So again, with that bleaching and the curling of the leaves, we suspect that's herbicide damage. And the only herbicide that we can think of that bleaches that way would be tenacity. So and I know that's not a common herbicide. It's not something everybody's applying. So that's kind of the other question is, but again, based on the way the leaf curl and that sort of thing, we'd still say that would be some sort of herbicide damage.
All right, thank you guys. Well, earlier in the show, we took a peek at how plants become All-American selections. And for our Garden Minute this week, Extension educator Terry James has another one of those great plants to focus on. Let's take a minute to see what's happening in the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're going to continue looking at all those new 2017 All-America selections, see how they're doing in our garden and how they like Nebraska. We're going to look at two today, although they are basically cousins. They're the Vinca Mega Bloom. They are an orchid color and a pink halo color. So basically they're the exact same plant, just different colors. They have a very nice stand. They have really liked our heat. Vincas do love heat. So they withstand the heat and humidity very well here in Nebraska. They have huge, large blooms on them. They have the little white eye that really catches you in landscape beds to bring you into those design elements. They maintain a really nice dense habit, and the flowers are staying on there, and we really haven't had to deadhead them or anything, so they're a very clean plant. So check out the Orchid Halo and the Pink Halo Mega Bloom Vincas in our Backyard Farmer Garden this week.
Those Vincas out there are really gorgeous this year, and that subtle color difference is striking. The flowers are bigger, they're really cool. So AAS works sometimes, most times. All right, questions. So this is a viewer a couple miles west of Kearney.
Right.
They have a strawberry patch,
Okay.
and teensy weensy, almost the size of a seed, are they're just, what are those things?
Little bugs crawling in the top of the strawberry.
And eating. They look
So-
like mush.
Okay, what we're talking about here are probably picnic beetles or four-spotted fungus beetles. I call them picnic beetles, that's what I always grew up with, but their more scientific name is the four-spotted fungus beetle. And they are attracted to fermenting fruits. If there's any part of the fruit that's sort of dying anyway, they will attack it. If it's an over-ripened strawberry, that's one of their favorites. So one thing I read about that you can do for these is to set up a trap for them using a fermenting solution. So that could be stale beer and fruit that you mix together, yeast and molasses that you mix together. Cut the top of a 2-liter bottle and then set that about 4 feet out of your garden where you want to protect, and set it upwind of the plants, if I remember correctly, so that they fly over and they're attracted to that rather than to your strawberry patch, and they'll fall in and they'll drown. If you empty it regularly, you will be able to control them, hopefully.
Wow, and you should have seen the look, our audience, of everybody wondering about who would let beer ferment.
How do you know it's stale?
How many spots do they have?
4.
Okay, so Cole, this is we don't know where, South Lincoln. Lawn with more crabgrass than ever before. They used a pre-emergence in late April. One to know, can they spray now for the crabgrass without hurting the turf?
So fortunately, lucky for you, the temperatures are kind of cool right now. We're in a little bit of a cool snap for early August, and we typically say if the air temperature is less than 85, it's safe to spray some of those herbicides like Acclaim or Phenoxaprop is the active ingredient there, or Drive, which is quinclorac. So those are going to be safer during these cooler days, so now would be a good time. It'll take a couple applications, though, to get control of those plants right now.
All right, excellent. Lauren, white powder-like deposits on their dwarf cherry tree. They live in Nebraska City. We're hearing a lot of white powder-like deposits in a lot of plants. What do you suppose?
Yeah, and so actually, if people were tuned in last week, I questioned powdery mildew on cherry, which I was wrong. So there is definitely a lot of powdery mildew
Okay.
on cherry, and that's what I would say it is.
Okay.
I would get on a fruit spray tree program much earlier in the year, though. Don't try to manage it now.
All right, excellent. Jeff, excuse me. We have a viewer who actually says they have red Potomac potatoes. This is in Seward. There's a group of the clusters on most of the potatoes and normal potatoes under the soil. The clusters actually look like potatoes. They're reddish.
Right.
Are they potatoes on top, or are they the seeds of potatoes?
Well, I'm guessing that that's from the blossoms, and so those vines just drop down on top of the ground. So that's what we're seeing there. It's just the seeds of that. So,
Okay. While you are doing that, we will start the lightning round. Are you ready, Jeff?
yes, ma'am.
We have a viewer who bought 5 blue delphiniums from a box store last year, but they didn't bloom this year. Any idea why?
They're just not reliable bloomers. So, and they're heavy feeders. So I would say try something else.
All right. A Lincoln viewer bought 4 clematis, but 2 of the 4 don't climb.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't really know. I mean, fertility may be an issue. You might want to look at your light exposure. So that would be one of the things.
Okay. So shoots around a walnut tree. They've tried everything to get the shoots around the walnut to die, but they aren't. So what should they do?
Well, I think suckers on any tree are tough. So other than cutting them back, and if you get tired of that, then you might want to consider removing the tree and trying something else.
Okay. We have a Republican City viewer that has ewes that are at least 30 years old.
Wow.
They're starting to get some brown twiggage
Right.
in them. They're wondering what
there might be some cankers. They're getting older. I would just look at pruning out some of the dead, making sure, again, that you're not pruning it kind of that inverted triangle, that you make sure that the top is narrower than the bottom so you get good light.
Okay. So what will the predicted cold nights do to the setting of tomatoes that we've been waiting for?
Well, I don't know if it'll make a big change. It's not going to be that cold. And actually, we might see some of our fruit stay on a little bit longer. So, and I'm hoping it's a positive thing.
Of course it is, because
Yeah.
it's not 100. All right. Let's see. Lauren, are you ready? Do you want the turf questions tonight or the path questions?
Just whichever one. I'm ready like a chainsaw to cut down a dead tree. Here we go.
Okie doke. So, can verticillium wilt spread between different species of plants in a yard, or is it species specific?
Typically not amongst people. There are some common species that are susceptible, but it won't jump to everything.
Okay. Peonies are covered with powdery mildew. Is that bad for the health of the plant, or should they go ahead and cut those completely off right now?
It is bad for the health of the plant, but I wouldn't worry about it. I would let it go and just see what you can do. Put some overhead irrigation on them. That'll cut it back a little bit.
Okay. We have a viewer who says they have tiny little shrooms like 1/2 inch in diameter by the hundreds in their mulch. Should they worry about that, or just kick them over?
Don't worry about it. It's just growing on the mulch. Try cedar or coniferous mulches to reduce
Okay.
those.
A young oak has anthracnose, a terrible type of anthracnose. Will it recover, or should they replace?
It can recover. You can get some significant twig dieback with anthracnose, so you just want to see if it's affected overall health or architecture of the tree. You may need to do some reforming of it, and then also next spring make a fungicide application on a new tree just to try to get it up and going well.
All right, excellent.
Right
Nice.
at bud break on the fungicide.
Excellent, nice job. You want path questions? Turf.
I'll do turf.
Okay, so this
Playing
viewer,
Jeopardy tonight, or what's going on?
this viewer wants to know, if they wait till late fall to overseed, can they spray the broadleaves earlier?
If you want to seed after spraying broadleaves, yeah, you just need to wait probably 4 weeks or so after spraying the broadleaves.
Okay. Is a starter fertilizer a good idea for the late fall season, or should they do some other type of fertilizer with it?
Starter fertilizer for the late fall season, I would say probably a more soluble source like urea. And going back to the first question, it would probably be better to spray the broadleaves and then wait 4 weeks and seed after that.
Gotcha.
That's what I said the first time.
Yes, it is.
Question 3.
How short should the lawn be mowed before it is overseeded?
That really depends. Is low enough that you can get the turf into the canopy, that's new seeds in the canopy. I wouldn't necessarily go as low as you can, but definitely a little bit lower than what your normal mowing height was.
Okay.
1 or 2 clicks down.
It's been extremely dry in the Gothenburg area. Should they wait until spring to seed?
It depends on the turf. Buffalo do it in the spring, tall fescue, Kentucky bluegrass do it in the fall.
Okay. And I think you're done, and you're not getting 2 points for the question you answered the same twice.
Well, that's not fair.
Are you ready, Jonathan?
Yes.
So this person's significant other sprayed Tempo on the potato bugs, and now they're wondering if the taters are okay to eat.
Always check the label for information like that and see what the post-harvest interval is for potatoes.
Excellent. We have a viewer who sprayed malathion for their bagworms on their maple. Was that a good choice, or should they have used something else?
We would prefer to see BT used earlier in the season. Malathion and Carbaryl 7 can be used at this point in the season, though.
All right. We have another viewer who used Thuricide
Okay.
on the same bagworms.
I would say BT again and 7 would be the preferred choices for the bagworms.
Okay, excuse me. Beautiful butterflies in the beauty shot, on the driveway, all over everything. What are they and what do they do? How many, what?
They are the painted ladies, or the cosmopolitan, some people call them, and they're quite common this year.
Excellent. Should tussock moths be removed from the milkweed plants?
I would say no. Some people that try to rear monarchs do that, but they're also a beneficial insect, so keep them around.
All right. Why shouldn't a systemic drench be used on lindens for Japanese beetles?
It is illegal, according to the label currently, because of a pollinator kill that occurred on lindens back in 2014 in Oregon. So it is against the law to treat lindens with systemic neonics.
Excellent. Excellent. Nice job, all.
Huzzah.
All right.
It's a good reason.
Yeah, no kidding. Go to jail for sprays. That's not a good idea. All right, so what do we have for the plants of the week?
We got purple going on here today. So this is 3 great pollinators. We have the taller ones here. This one's kind of fallen down. But the tall one here, we'll start off with that, is Liatris, Gay Feather, Blazing Star. So this is scaly Blazing Star. So it likes dry, full sun. And Prairie Blazing Star likes more moist, wet conditions. So how tall is this one? Do you know, Kim?
It's about 18 at the most.
18 inches. So it's a shorter one. Yeah. And then we also have ironweed. So this one out here. No, that's the Verbinia. So the ironweed is this one here. Okay. So we have the ironweed, the one kind of in full bloom right now. Native in the aster family, named for its strong, non-flopping stems. So again, it likes full sun. This is another one you'll see kind of on the edges, it seems like a lot of times, of prairies. And then the other one, the one that's more closed up or with the small flowers, is tall Verbinia. So herbaceous perennial, but not here, huh? So it seeds itself. So more of an annual here than it is a perennial.
Exactly. And they're covered with buzzing things. So yeah, it's purple, but you know, we did yellow a week ago. And give a nod to K-State or whatever again. All righty, so your next picture set is kind of the, again, Wiggle World, but not really. It is
Smorgasbord time?
what is this?
Okay, I can play this game.
Then you have to tell us a little more. But this is a fun one because she said this is actually sent from her sister in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And we've seen it here.
Yeah, we're looking at a tiger swallowtail caterpillar here as an adult, beautiful yellow and black butterfly. As a larva, if we could see its face a little bit better, you would see some eyes, eye spots on top of its head. And it has an osmetrium that it can avert from its face that looks like a snake's tongue and smells really bad. So they're actually snake mimics. Dennis would probably like these particular caterpillars. And they like tulip trees like we see here in this image.
Perfect, awesome. All right, and so then we have this little guy on the asparagus. This is a Bellevue viewer, I think. and wants to know what this is and how do they treat it. And she's had trouble with asparagus beetles.
Okay, good news. You don't have to treat it. This is a beneficial insect. It's actually an immature lady beetle, ladybug. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a multicolored Asian lady beetle larva. They are very beneficial as predators, as adults and as larvae. It's probably helping to eat some of the eggs of your asparagus beetle. So let this thing live in your garden and it will live there for room and board.
Perfect. All right, Cole, this is a buffalo grass. Oops, I forgot this guy. So
No,
this
it's
is
not.
this is the really, that's not buffalo grass. Even I know that. This is really funky. We had two
Okay.
viewers send us these like tubes of, and then there's a worm thing in there. What is that?
Okay, so we're looking at the construction efforts of the leafcutter bee. Leafcutter bees are important pollinators. The female will land on leaves and she sort of zip cuts off a piece of leaf that she folds up kind of origami style. And inside of that, she's going to pack pollen and an egg, and then she shoves her construction down into a tube or a hole in the ground, and the baby hatches out, eats its food, and emerges as a new bee next year. So that's what you've discovered. It's actually a very important pollinator, so I hope you didn't kill any of the baby bees that were in there.
Nope, neither one of those viewers that sent those pictures like that killed them.
Good, great. That's what I like to hear.
All right, now we have real buffalo grass.
Okay.
So this is the Malcolm area. They've been getting 2 to 4 inch spots in the buffalo grass. They thought it was the rabbits doing rabbity things. Spots keep increasing, seeded last June. No additional water or chemicals. They did do 1 pound of N this per 1,000 square feet this spring.
Okay. So I don't think those wascally wabbits are to blame here. We can see in this picture that we're looking at right now, there's some pretty apparent lesions on the leaves. And so there's a disease we call leaf spotted buffalo grass, and there's a number of different pathogens that can cause it. In the genre Bipolaris, Curvularia, and Alternaria, just kind of FYI. But I wouldn't really do anything to control it. It's not going to get severe enough that it will cause any real damage. Buffalo will recover. Again, just make sure you're not irrigating at night. Shouldn't be irrigating buffalo grass that much anyway. And then just kind of wait for it to recover would be my recommendation.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Cole. All right, so now we have a tater plant question for you, Lauren. It is, are they supposed to look like this, is their question. We're not sure where this viewer's from, but
If you're in a plant pathology department, they might look that way, which is pretty cool. So I think that one was early blight on
Okay.
potato, which is a fungal disease that you can manage. You're going to want to watch. At this point, I wouldn't try to manage it, but when you dig the potatoes, just be careful not to do any bruising because you can have some infection of the tubers and it can affect storage at this point. Make sure you use good sanitation and clean it up for next year.
all right. And then the second one is the pepper plant that is showing these black
so
mushy.
The black spot on there, when I zoomed in, I thought I saw like a hole in there, but I'm not certain. There are no other spots that I could see on the leaves. There are some fungal and bacterial diseases of pepper, and if that is a hole, then I think it might just be a wound and an injury when I zoomed in. If it's not, when they get in there, if you have a lot of rot inside, it may be a bacterial soft rot or something like that. I don't think it's a blossom end rot scenario or anything like that. It's in the wrong spot. I would just recommend, if you have any overhead irrigation, avoid that. Make sure you're using mulch and then watch it. If it's a disease, though, you should see some spots on the leaves, and it doesn't look like you have that.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Jeff, this is a Norfolk viewer that has clay soil, maple that really has not done well at all. They did take out the rock and the landscape fabric. They're taking out the tree. They're going to grind the stump. They want to know how far from the original tree can they plant, and then what might you suggest for Norfolk?
Okay. Well, as far as, it's unfortunate. It looks like at one point that tree had done pretty well, and so something changed, so whether drought or something. As far as replanting, it really depends on how thorough you are in your stump grinding, and then cleaning that grinded material out of there and replacing it with good topsoil. So you could go right back into the exact same location if you've done a pretty good job excavating all the ground up stump and soil and putting in new topsoil. If you don't want to go to that much trouble, then I would just get far enough away that you're not really interfering with the old root system, so as that breaks down.
All right.
As far as replacements, sugar maple isn't bad. We talked about black maples earlier, so that might be, if you wanted to stick with the maple, that might be a better choice. There's really a lot of different options. Certainly oaks, I think that would be one of the options that you could think about, chinkapin oak or swamp white oak would probably both do pretty well in the Columbus area. So.
All right, excellent. Thank you, sir. Well, imagine strolling out to your vegetable garden and you see one of these nasties headed your way. Don't panic. They really are pretty harmless. These are cicada-killing wasps, and for the most part, they will not bother you unless you are, in fact, a cicada. So for more on this fascinating insect, we go to our entomologist team of Jonathan Larson and Jody Green.
Jody, it looks like you have the next villain of the Godzilla movie series over here on our sitting stool here.
Very, very close, Jonathan. These are the infamous cicada killer wasps. So they start flying when the cicadas emerge. They're the largest wasp that we have in Nebraska. The females can grow up to 2 inches long, and the males are a little bit smaller
A
though.
little bit smaller. You do have to be pretty large if you're going to catch one of these cicadas that we see flying around. Our annual Dogs Day cicadas are pretty large, so I can see why they're quite big. Is that one of the reasons that they're so large?
Right. So she's got to fly out and hunt and catch them. They catch a cicada and they paralyze it with their venom. She drags it back to the burrow and she'll lay an egg on it, and the larvae will emerge, eating and consuming that cicada as food, pupating over the winter, and emerging the next fall. Circle of life.
I'm always really impressed with the digging abilities of these wasps. When we look around here at the school that we're visiting today, we see all these nests. They can be up to 2 feet deep down into the soil, and they can run as long as 36 inches underneath the ground.
So not only does the female do the hunting and gathering, but she moves the earth to make these burrows. So those mounds that you see, she digs that out from the underground. And those U-shaped entrants that are characteristic of their nest, she does that with her hind legs that have 2 spurs on them, by the way.
So we've got males and females flying around. The male doesn't really do a whole lot though, right? He's sort of all bark and no bite. He has a pseudo stinger on the tip of his abdomen. He flies around and pretends to guard the nest with that water gun, essentially, but it's not really hooked up to any venom. So you don't really have to worry about him. Is that right?
The males are fakers. They're aggressive though, and they'll fly right up in your face. They're territorial, so they're defending their territory from other males, so they'll try to attack them, and it looks like they're attacking humans, but they really have nothing behind that stinger. The female, on the other hand, does have venom behind that large stinger, and she uses that though for prey, not for people. So they don't normally sting, only when they're defending themselves, as in being handled, squished, or stepped on with bare feet. They're not like other ground nesting social wasps.
So where do people find these wasps out in their landscape?
So they're located normally in well-drained soils, loose soils, and in full sunlight. They can be located at homes, around flower beds, around patios, sidewalks, sometimes in the middle of the turf, flower beds, things like that.
So if they don't sting you, they don't cause a lot of damage, they're not harming grass, they're not harming structures, do we have to control these insects?
Not necessarily. A lot of times they're just there being predators in nature. But sometimes in annual aggregation sites, when there are a lot of cicadas and a lot of nests, sometimes people want to control them, but it's really difficult. I would recommend they do that at night, and they treat each individual burrow with some sort of pyrethroid dust. But normally there's no control necessary.
How do they apply the dust?
They can do that with a turkey baster, or they have bulb dusters available that you can buy.
Don't spray over the whole turf area because it won't soak in, right?
Correct.
You can also use your tennis racket to swing around and take care of some of the ones that are buzzing around. But if they're not really bothering you, they're not causing any damage, you can just enjoy this wonderful parasitoid part of the pageantry of nature.
You know, it really is hard to not be frightened by these wasps, but if you don't bother them, they're not going to bother you. Our producer actually walked around in them for a couple of hours, and he lived to tell the tale. So, and he's afraid of everything. No, he's not. No, he's not.
I brought one.
There you go. Jody made like a
Jody
charm.
made a resin one here.
Okay, you have 3 in a row here on interesting insects.
Okay.
This first one is an elkhorn. They're curious. They think it's a young dragonfly.
Okay, this is actually a robber fly, so this is a fully grown dipteran. Just a point of order would be that if an insect has wings, it's an adult. It will not turn into a further adult. Once they have their wings, they're fully grown. Robber flies are important predators. They're very strong, they're very fast. They catch a lot of different things. I've actually seen an image from Omaha of one that caught a Japanese beetle and was munching down on it. So we definitely like to have these flies buzzing around.
Perfect. Your second one was found on the underside of a cucumber leaf in Blair.
This is an interesting looking one. It's a leaf-footed bug nymph. So this is the baby form of a leaf-footed bug. As adults, their calf and thigh area that would be equitable to us are flattened out and they look like a paddle or like a leaf, hence the name leaf-footed bug. Typically not a pest. They can poke their needle-like mouthpart into vegetables and fruits, but usually not in high enough numbers to cause a problem.
Awesome. And your third one, this is Holdridge.
Okay.
They think it's a black saddlebag dragonfly.
And they are correct. So the black saddlebag gets its name because it's kind of hard to see with the picture because there's so many beautiful flowers and leaves in the background there. Those black kidney bean shapes on the lower wings there are how they get their name. So it looks like a cowboy's saddlebags are on the back of this dragonfly. And I think that'd be a lot of fun to ride one around in the sky, an entomologist's dream perhaps. They are important predators. They eat mosquitoes both as an adult and as a larva. Dragonflies are aquatic as larvae, and as nymphs, I should say. And down in the water, they grab and eat all the mosquitoes that lay their eggs down in there. So they're beneficial both as an adult and as larvae, just like the lady beetle we talked about before.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, a couple for you. Cole, the first one here, excuse me, is a small plot of foreign turf in the fescue. They're
Okay.
near Juniata, so they want to know what it is.
So it's kind of hard to tell from this picture because there's two really good options. It's either creeping bentgrass or nimblewill. And the second picture that we're looking at right now looks more like creeping bentgrass because it's a little stressed from our recent weather. So I'm going to guess that this is creeping bentgrass. Regardless of which one it is, the controls are pretty similar. We're either going to use glyphosate, which is a non-selective herbicide, or mesotrione, or even Pylex. And mesotrione's tenacity, sorry, are products that will all work. Tenacity and Pylex will be selective and won't hurt your turf generally. With nimblewill, you need to start those applications, and it will take multiple in the spring as soon as it greens up. And if it's creeping bentgrass, you need to make those applications in the fall as it's losing color.
All right, and then we have crop circles in this yard. She's, what do we think here?
Yeah, so I mean, this is again kind of another tough one, but anytime I see these sunken patches like this, I think compromised roots. And so it could be, traffic and wear, could be something buried that's compromising the rooting and making the turf grow compactly. Could also be summer patch, which Lauren showed us at the beginning of the show, and that would probably be my guess.
All right. Lauren, you have Peach World, which you can bat back and forth. The first is Marquette, which is fruit peach mummies. What did you do
Beautiful.
about this next year?
Brown rot. This is great. People send the saddlebag dragonfly to Jonathan. I get the peach one. Anyway, I think I'm going to go back to school and be an entomologist. You guys get to have all the fun. But, this is the inoculum for next year. So you do want to try to remove these if you have a lot of them. Sanitation does help, but you probably have quite a bit of brown rot in your peaches. So you'll want to look at a spray schedule for that. If you see it, it doesn't occur all the time.
Okay, and then we have Beatrice peaches. This is what they're seeing in this one.
So when I go back to school and become an entomologist, I may find out what this is, because this is not a disease, but I do believe this is in Jonathan's camp.
This looks like earwig damage. Earwigs will crawl inside of peaches and do what we see here, this kind of tunneling and black marking inside of the fruit, which could be confused for some sort of fungal pathogen sort of infection. You can trap for earwigs if you use a tuna can and fill it with vegetable oil and bacon grease. University of California, Riverside has demonstrated that they will go to that and get stuck in it, and you can throw that away and kill them.
I love bacon. I'm going to have to gotta go back to
And
school.
Spinosad
you
is
got
also
yet
there.
another peach picture, Lauren. So this is yet a third viewer. This is in Holdridge.
And I think this is some of the
Same
same.
thing.
Same
I think
stuff.
this is the
Okay.
same, some insects
Same
eating around
thing.
that seed.
And then you have a pear by Barada.
And this is my wheelhouse, so this is good. This is actually a pretty severe case of scab
Yeah.
on pear. And so you can see the roughness. It almost looks like that rusting you see on potatoes when we see scab, and sometimes they will crack as well. So scab is a fungal disease. That infection starts much earlier in the season. So, at this point, don't do anything. But next year, if this was severe and you had a lot of that, I'd really recommend a fruit tree spray schedule starting much earlier in that pink stage of bloom.
Awesome. All right, you have a couple simple ones, Jeff.
Okay, good.
This is a Brainerd viewer who wants to know what this is. Comes up every year in the same place in the garden. And I think we have that one, and then maybe a close-up of the potato chip-like seeds.
Okay, so that's Illinois bundleflower. So, and it can be, I think it's kind of a cool plant. It can get, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 feet tall, depending on the location. And it produces those really fun seeds, those kind of curly seeds like that. So it is a fun plant. The downside to it is it can produce a ton of seed, and it can be very persistent. And in locations where we've had it on campus, years, centuries after it's been gone, it's still coming up in places. So that's the downside. If you have it and you like it and you want to keep it, great. But if you ever want to get rid of it, good luck.
Okay, and I think you have a second picture. Is that right? That's all we have for you. So Illinois bundleflower. So
Yep.
you got off scot-free.
Wow. Ooh.
Okay. we have announcements of fun things always in the gardening world. Our first is native plants and the benefits of biodiversity in the community landscape. You can't say that fast 6 times. August 8th at the Ferguson House here in Lincoln, we have a website on the screen for you on that one. The second one, Produce from the Heart, every Tuesday through September. Grow a Row has now surpassed us with donations of 464 pounds. Backyard Farmer 459. That is just awesome. The third one, we are going to be at State Fair on location, Raising Nebraska building on Wednesday, August 30th. Q&A from 2:30 to 3:30. Live to tape, 4 to 5. We hope we have a fabulous audience, as we always do for that. We get to eat cotton candy and fried things on a stick, so it's perfect.
Did they just bring it to us?
No.
Oh,
We cruise the Midway and we hand out cash. And,
cool.
Okay, so would you give us, for a quick question, give us a little more background on the Cosmopolitan Painted Lady Butterfly and why there's so many and what's happened?
Yeah, we've had a couple of people call the office lately and ask why we're seeing so many painted ladies this year. And I did some research, and it's actually because last year was an El Nino year. So this is a migratory butterfly, just like the monarch, and their migratory path goes into California. So California had a really nice year last year. Plants were doing well, and so that meant lots of happy butterflies over there, and that meant lots of happy butterflies to fly back this way, lay their eggs, and create caterpillars. And that is why we've seen so many painted ladies this year, it would seem.
Perfect. All right. Cole, spotted spurge this year. People seeing a lot of it. This is a Seward viewer.
Okay. So spotted spurge is a summer annual broadleaf. You can stop it with a pre-emergence herbicide like Gallery in spring, around the same time that you would control crabgrass, or you can use any of the broadleaf herbicides, or broadleaf herbicide mixtures probably, about now. Just make sure that it's not too hot and they're going to move off-site and damage an ornamental plant.
All right. Lauren, this is a Prairie Home viewer that wonders why the peaches are, half of them are rotting and half are green. You suppose it's the same old
Well, it could be a couple things. So one could be the feeding insect injury like we saw earlier, because that will result in the whole fruit rotting many times. The other could be brown rot like we saw the mummy of. So that couple things. When you do pick those peaches, you can use a hot water dip to try to reduce that and store them better. So 140 degrees for 2 minutes will take care of it.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Jeff, an Omaha viewer says they have a silver maple dripping a sap-like mist onto everything. Not just in one spot. Is this the tree exuding an exudate, or is it, what do you think?
Well, maybe with the heat and especially with the moisture. I've seen that a little bit on campus. So it just may be from the stomata just kind of misting out, cooling itself that way. So unless you're seeing sap running down the stem or something like that, or a wound, I don't know if it's anything I'd be worried about.
It could be some of my aphid friends. They create honeydew that could get
that's true.
aerosolized and fall down on people in cars as well.
Darn insects.
Blame us for everything.
Speaking of which, we have yellow eggs on milkweed. What are they right now?
I would guess that it's probably oleander aphids. They look like an egg, but if you poke them, they will drop off the plant. They can cause a lot of damage and a lot of honeydew. Just blast them off with a hose of water, and they'll fly off and never come back.
Perfect. You have about 15 seconds. Cole, to answer, is August too late to plant buffalo grass? The seeds are too big to sit in the go in the drop seeder. Should they hand broadcast?
Well, you could try to use a broadcast spreader. Maybe that would work better if it's not working in your drop seeder. It's not too late. You just won't get full establishment by the end of the season, but it'll get started and then it'll finish covered next year.
All right, perfect.